Dead people, zombies. The wound. The procession of the dead. He dazedly took off his cap. There was a gaping hole in it. Well, I have a small gut? The girl said cheerfully. Then she grew serious and repeated. All questions later. Help me get her to safety. We didn't dare to argue further and quickly dragged the sick girl to our dugout. The black-haired girl walked beside us. As we climbed back into our temporary shelter, the black-haired girl quickly checked something with her friend and asked, "Can you pick some burdocks or at least reeds?" Andrei and I nodded and ran out of the dugout. Stopping a few meters away from her, we looked at each other. Then Andrew said, "In general, what is our plan? Either run far away, or obey this girl. Considering that she has a Remington, I don't even know what would be worse." I took a moment, and I said, "Look, why don't we try teaming up? After all, she has a wounded friend in her arms. Our help will not hurt." Andrei seriously thought about it. Suddenly I heard some strange rumbling coming from the dugout. I pushed Andrei under the ribs and asked, "Hear it? What is it?" We looked at each other and ran closer. There were some other sounds coming from under the ground besides the rumbling, muttering or. Suddenly the sounds were gone. But only for a split second. Then there was a long scream. Andrei and I Kabaram rolled down. What happened? What's going on? We all chattered. Before us appeared an extraordinary picture. Black-haired girl glowing, and her friend squirming and screaming. It was like some kind of demon exorcism. Andrei seemed to think the same thing. He involuntarily reached out to cross himself. Suddenly the hum and the light were cut off. The black-haired woman, breathing heavily, sank to the ground, and her friend froze on the cot. What the hell was that? Andrew and I screamed. Everything. I'll explain. Water. Andrei rushed to a niche in the wall, where we stored supplies and gun magazines, and gave the black-haired witch a bottle filter. As if panting, she drank half the bottle in one gulp and inhaled deeply and said, "Make a fire." We sat by the fire and ate stew straight from the cans. The black-haired woman didn't say anything yet, and we felt that it was better to keep silent for the time being. So we sat there, to the crackling of twigs and the light of the fire. At last the sorceress put the jar aside and said, "Well, ask." Andrei and I looked at each other and in unison asked, "Who are you?" She took a deep breath and began. "You see, my friend and I have similar abilities. At least, I think we do. I'm a sort of phenomenon. When I was 11, I was taken to a lab for experiments. Kind of like Class D at SCP, you know?" I nodded mechanically. I was a real SCP fan. Andrei also waved his hand. "Go on, say." And in this lab I was injected with some drug, after which I got incredible abilities. I can aim, have first-class intuition and can make me do what I want. But during this experiment, something went wrong and Anyway, I somehow created an explosion. I don't know how I did it. And you can imagine what happened. I woke up to someone yelling, "Help!" Given the situation, I first picked up my gun and then woke up Andrei. We crawled out of our dugout. The voice came from the bank of the river. There was also a bridge. Andreyuka and I cautiously went to the sound. When we looked out of the coastal bushes, we saw a wet girl, with difficulty supporting on her shoulder another, a little older in appearance. The girl was walking straight toward us, as if she knew where we were. But she couldn't see us, the thick reeds were hiding us from her. Andrew and I jumped out of the reeds with rifles at the ready. The girl noticed us and shouted, not caring about the silence. "Why are you standing up? Help me carry her." Andrei warily asked. "And who are you anyway?" The girl came even closer and angrily said, "All questions later, first help me? Didn't anyone teach you to help women?" I was stunned at such insolence, and Andreyuka also stepped forward and pointed a gun at the stranger. Now the state of emergency, and women placed in the bomb shelter. "Who are you and what are you doing here? Talk fast or get out." The black-haired girl stopped trying to drag her friend's body and put it on the ground. She straightened up and suddenly pulled a trick. A rifle appeared out of nowhere in her hands. She pointed it at Andrei's face. "If you think that a woman is not capable of anything, then let me ask you how I managed to survive after jumping from a 5-meter bridge and put a Remington on your insolent face? Help me get her to safety." She nodded at her friend. "Why should we help you? I'm sure you don't have the guts to shoot." I looked at the girl lying on the ground. "Yeah, well, she's not doing so well. But she doesn't look like a zombie." The girl standing there suddenly smiled. And then she pulled a trick. She raised the muzzle a little higher and fired at the same moment. Andrew fell from surprise and half an hour later, a gray SUV was speeding along the highway. The driver was a boy of about 14. A girl and another young man sat in the back, with a younger girl in the seat next to her. Down the slope there were signs of a campfire and a dugout. "What do you mean by that?" The man in the officer's uniform shouted, putting the incident report aside. "We had 4 children under our noses, and you're just telling me about it now." "Well, Chief, they're just kids." The man in the camouflage suit tried to defend himself. "They want romance. And what can they do? I told you to report all people immediately. Find them immediately." He got up from the table and walked over to a large formalin capsule. There was a body floating inside, barely recognizable under the tinted glass. Suddenly a dark hand was pressed against the glass. The reflection of the officer's face merged with the dark face that emerged from the depths. "And disarm it."